Hi everybody. So this is my second try at making a video that's going to work. So let's see what happens. I hope everyone is doing well. I tried to make the first video in my living room, which is a little bit nicer, but now I'm back in my bedroom because there are people in the house making noise. So, this is how it is these days. So, um, I hope you guys are feeling well. It's tough these days, and you just have to take a deep breath and do the best you can. If nothing else, these strange times are providing writers a lot of content. So let's look at the bright side. And speaking of bright side, I hope you guys get out in the beautiful weather, even if it's a little chilly. The flowers are out because, spring doesn't know that we're having trouble here. So the flowers are looking beautiful, and you'll feel so much better if you get out in the open. Okay, that's my advice for the day. So the critique. So the idea is that you will look at a chapbook of a poet. A chapbook is a small book of poems by just one poet. And it's not a collection of their poems over the years, but just written in one certain period. And it's usually really thin. So you're going to look at that book. Those of you who were actually in class right before spring break chose a book from my collection. You're going to look at that. You're going to read the book. You're going to choose 4 poems, and you're going to take notes on those poems in terms of the content and the style, poetic devices, whatever you notice. And you're going to write a critique. And then you're going to take what you've learned and you're going to write a poem that emulates the style. Emulate means imitate the style of the poet that you chose in terms, or possibly just the content, and you use your own style. There are a lot of ways to do it. So I'm just going to do a little demonstration here of how you might do it. So this is a book, and it's going to be backwards to you guys, by a poet named Gary Snyder, and he's writing in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. This book is called Turtle Island, and it won the Pulitzer Prize, which is a big American prize, in 1975. Very old book. He was kind of a hippie-ish kind of a guy, and he wrote this poem called Anasazi. Now, Anasazi were an Indian tribe, or a group of tribes, possibly, living in what's now Arizona, and they were cliff dwellers. And they have still, if you can go to Arizona and see the remains of their houses and of their ceremonial fields, it's really cool. But they just kind of disappeared, and no one quite knows what happened, if they left and went to another area, but they were a very big and powerful group, and then suddenly they were gone. Anyway, so this poem is called Anasazi, and he's just imagining the Anasazi life. Here we go. Let me get my glasses here. Alrighty. Anasazi, Anasazi, tucked up in clefts in the cliffs, growing strict fields of corn and beans, sinking deeper and deeper in earth up to your hips in gods, your head all turned to eagle down and lightning for knees and elbows, your eyes full of pollen, the smell of bats, the flavor of sandstone grit on the tongue, women birthing at the foot of ladders in the dark, trickling streams in hidden canyons under the cold rolling desert, corn basket, wide-eyed, red baby, rock lip home, Anasazi. So this is a poem. It's just a series of images, really. And you have olfactory images, the smell of bats. You have taste images, the flavor of sandstone grit, and then grit on the tongue is a what is it called? I wrote that down? Tactile. I always forget that word. A tactile image, just how something feels on your skin. And I'm going to turn this and show you, even though it's backwards. So you can see that the format is really unusual. He's got indentations in some places, and in some places he's got spaces between words that you wouldn't normally see. So I want you to notice that, but also speculate on why he might have chosen to indent certain things, to leave spaces between words. I mean, assume that he did it for another reason other than to be weird. I mean, he was a weird writer, and he was trying to do something different. But try and figure out, given what he was trying to say, why would he have done that? So you want to look at the content. So content-wise, it's about the Anasazi. He's trying to imagine what it was like living as a woman, birthing children, being a baby. So he's trying to get into the minds and the life and really sense it with all of his senses of that time. But it's a very short poem. And then you're going to, just sort of look at some of the poetic moves he does. So because the form is so unusual, it's easy to think, oh, this is all just a really modern, weird poem. But really, he does some really traditional things. He starts out Anasazi, Anasazi, and this is an old ode form where you're calling up the person or the beings or the people to whom you're speaking. He uses repetition, Anasazi, Anasazi, and then he ends with Anasazi, so it has kind of a break. He does put, he's got stanzas that are various lengths, but he does sort of make separations into thoughts, and he uses, some various kinds of imagery. So look at what the poet does that's traditional, what's non-traditional, the form that they use, and also why they might have used that form. That's really what you want to get to as a critic. So when you're writing about poetry, this isn't a reader response. This should be a more formal literary analysis. So you've done literary analysis in your classes, if only in English 1210. So you're writing not to be by formal. I don't mean stiff, but I mean more in the academic style of not using I, me, my, you, your. So you get it to sound a little bit more objective, like you're just looking for, making observations and then giving evidence or examples for those observations. And not using I, me, my also helps you focus on the poem and getting down into the poem instead of having you focus and stay in your own head and back here. You want to get into the writer's head more. So, just see that lovely, I've got poison ivy all over the place. I try and do some yard work, poison ivy, oh my gosh. So, it's just a little aside for you. So on Saturday the 5th, you're going to post your notes to Blackboard. These are just the notes that you've made on the 4 poems, and they don't have to be, obviously in sentences. They could just be a list of notes, things, observations, very informal. And then I will send you back some comments, and then you'll write your draft. That'll be due on the 7th, and then the final will be critique will be due on the 11th. Now, some of you do not have a chapbook, and I have to say straight up, I'm not that sympathetic, because I think most of you weren't in class because you decided you just take spring break early. What do you know? You got lots of extra spring break that you didn't even plan on. So now maybe some of you had some legit emergencies, but I'm thinking most of you just thought, I don't think I'm going to go to that class today. So now that means you don't have your book. So I want to try and put it on you as much as possible. So there's some options. The first one is to look around your house and see if possibly there are any books of poetry, and they should be poetry by just one person, and not a collection. You never know. Also, look around. Ask maybe your mom has knows some neighbors who have suffered. Ask around in neighbors. Gosh, my neighbors are so bored. Some of them who don't have jobs, which is, I'm not making a joke about that because that's sad, but who aren't working. They've got not so much to do, and they're all kinds of activities on the neighborhood email. So maybe you have some neighbors who would be delighted that you're interested in poetry and they have poetry. Maybe it's someone who is an English teacher or professor or something. You never know what people have. So look around in your own house and your own neighborhood first to see if you can find a book of poetry. Okay? Now, let's say so you come up with nothing. If you live, I live in Chapel Hill. So if you live near Chapel Hill, Durham, Raleigh, semi near around here, and you'd like to come over to my house and pick up a book, I have 4 books, including this Gary Snyder. I left the others in the living room, but I have 4 books of poetry that aren't in my office. Everything else is in my office. So if you want to come by my house and pick it up, email me. We can do that, no problem. Yeah, I'll put it in the mailbox. You can pick it up. I'll wave at you from the driveway, all that stuff. Now, if neither of those work, email me and we'll figure out something to do. Okay? But the idea is to not cost you any money, but also to give you a little tiny bit of crap about not being in class. So I think we've accomplished those goals. Okay, so the next thing that you're going to do is to write a poem, an emulation poem. Emulation means imitation. You're going to imitate the content and the style, or the style maybe, of the poet that you have chosen. So I'm going to do another video about the emulation poem, but as you're reading through these poems, just think, what could I do that would emulate, take the ideas or the topics that this poet is talking about and make it my own, but still imitate the topic or use those topics to jump off of, or write a poem in the same style as this person but on a different topic. Okay, so there are a lot of ways you can go on that one. But this is a way, it's kind of counterintuitive, but by writing like someone else, it's a way to find your own voice, who you are, okay? And maybe sometimes in opposition to something, you can find out, where you are. Okay, so that's it. And I look forward to hearing from you if you have any issues. And you should have your notes to me by Saturday at 11:59 on Saturday the 5th. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.